In this investigation, 6 of the 8 in Pennsylvania.
Have you missed me? After a very long, very arduous summer, I finally got round to shooting another Pint with JG, so let's go. Hello and welcome to another Pint with JG. Did you miss me? Hope you did. So today we are in Wapentake, which is near Kirkgate Market in Leeds. It really is a beautiful, quaint little bar playing really mellow music, and has got lots of lovely beer and a fabulous little atmosphere, particularly for afternoon drinking. I genuinely wish I could sit here and rip into a session with a few mates. It's just got that lovely atmosphere. It's around the Kirkgate Market. It's highly recommended. The young chap downstairs at the bar, Ed, recommended a pint of North Pale Ale. It's all right. I'm not in love with it, but it's all right. There's loads of other beers to try here. It's a bit too fruity for me, to be honest. I'm a bit more of a bitter guy, but I always tend to go with the recommendation when I get there. Today, what I want to talk about is the one question that every candidate asks me when they're on the phone, particularly this time of year, because we're just coming back to the end of the summer holidays. So people come back, they start looking for jobs. It tends to be a very busy period for us around the late August, September time. That one question that everyone asks is, what is the market like right now? And so what we're going to talk about today is Johnnynomics. So in a typical market, and I guess what most people will be telling you, most of the recruitment consultants will be telling you, is we're in what some people would refer to as a candidate-led market. Now, what most people think of the basic economics of a candidate-led job market are that there are more jobs than there are candidates, and as a result, the candidates have all the power in the market. What I want to talk about today is actually, it isn't a candidate-led market, and I'll explain what I mean. You know, a candidate-led market is typically one, the last truly candidate-led market I remember was around the dot-com boom and maybe around the millennium bug boom, where there was a genuinely brutal shortage of candidates available on the market. And that small number of candidates had immense power in the market because, by sheer nature of, and I've made one earlier, our demand and supply curve, it pushed prices up along with the shortage of supply. Now, this market's slightly different, and I'll explain a little bit more as to why in a second. So you see, this market, as he writes on the back of the menu, is what I call a high velocity job market. And it's very different. An economist would argue that, and let's be honest, we are in a period of low unemployment. Low unemployment means that there are a lot of jobs. And an economist would argue that a large volume of jobs increases the supply of candidates on the market as the prices increase. People come out of their hiding place to make the most of the increase in prices. Actually, I don't agree with the traditional economic model in this instance, because what's actually happened, and there is a major contributor to this job market that nobody's noticed, and that contributor is what I call the LinkedIn button. Now, some of you may know what this is, some of you may not. The LinkedIn button is that button on your LinkedIn profile where you say, I'm available. So So what the LinkedIn button is doing is it's creating what is almost a false supply of candidates on the market. So a good example here is there are lots of people available out there who are, to all intents and purposes, quite happy in their work, but everybody's got a mate who's got a mate who's got a mate who's got a mate who just got an amazing job with stock options and a big pay rise, going to work for the latest shit, hot, sexy AI blockchain.com business. So as a result, because their mate got that job, they get a few calls from recruiters. They hit the button on LinkedIn that says, yeah, all right, hit me up with a potential job if you've got something exciting. But actually, those people have not got anything fundamentally wrong with the job that they've got, and they're not really job seeking. But what they are doing is they're increasing the supply and in turn increasing the velocity with which candidates move around the market. And what I mean by that is, let's just say you're reasonably happy. Maybe you sit on a scale +5, -5. +5 is I love it here, -5 is get me the hell out of here. Maybe you're a +1, a +2, maybe even a +3. But you hit the LinkedIn button anyway in case some recruiter rings you one afternoon with something that makes you think, do you know what, I'll give it a go. And before you know it, one afternoon, some recruitment consultant approaches you because you made yourself available via the LinkedIn button and actually hits you with a pretty good pitch. So our perfectly happy sales guy, who's perfectly happy in his job, accidentally or perhaps in a moment of weakness hits his LinkedIn button, gets approached by a million different recruitment consultants, and one afternoon finds himself in front of an interviewer who is blown away by the guy. Why? Because candidates who aren't looking for jobs have an aura and an air of confidence about them that candidates who are really keen to find a job simply don't have. It's a certain swagger, a certain way of talking, a certain way of moving, particularly if they're doing very, very well against target. And so, as a result, our guy is sat in front of our client, pushing up his market value with absolute ease. So our client is blown away and he offers the guy absolute top dollar. The candidate who's been offered top dollar and way more than he's on, for whom there isn't really that much wrong with the job he's got, gets up, leaves the job he's got and finds himself in a role where the expectation and the demand for success is much, much higher than he's ever experienced before. He gets there, the client's thinking, well, what happened to this guy that I hired who had the swagger all about him? The candidate's under pressure, and what happens is now in the high velocity job market is that there's a lot more movement. The candidate gets there and realises that the only reason he took the job was because of the money, and that fundamentally the only value proposition the employer had was the money. The client sat there thinking, hold on a minute, I paid a boatload of cash for a guy who hasn't performed a miracle when I needed a miracle because I haven't been able to hire a candidate for a year, and everybody cuts their losses very quickly. So what we've got is quite high demand, a false volume of supply in the market, and companies rapidly cutting their losses after having offered way above what should be market norms for some of the candidates. And I know I'm talking my way out of some pretty good fees here, because actually the above market norm salaries suit me, Michael and Inward Revenue absolutely down to the ground. But what it's creating is this velocity of movement, which is then in turn increasing the supply to meet the demand, and there's movement happening constantly. So it's not necessarily a candidate-driven market, and it's not necessarily a buyer's market. It's not necessarily about a huge volume of vacancies and a low volume of candidates. What it's about is rapid movement amongst people, some of whom weren't really looking for a job. So you know me now, and if you've been watching this vlog, you know I tend to get to a kind of conclusion point of any of these vlogs. So what's my point this week? Well, if you're a salesperson and you're in our world and in our sector, for God's sake, be careful. There's lots of opportunities to cash in for an extra 10 grand, but it's also really, really easy to cash in for an extra 10 grand on your basic and maybe some false stock options that aren't going to materialise into anything particularly spectacular, and wake up in the morning and find yourself in a job that's nowhere near as good as the one you had. And at the moment, the amount of times I see that is absolutely terrifying. So I mean it in the best possible way. If there's nothing wrong with the job you've got, as we say in Yorkshire up here at Wapentake, which is actually a truly Yorkshire phrase, and I'll give you the definition later, as we say in Yorkshire, if it's not brock, don't fix it. Secondly, if you're a client and you're a hiring manager in our market, be really careful and make sure you're selecting your recruiters carefully, and make sure you're qualifying with your recruiters how they're qualifying candidates. It's very, very easy in the current market, particularly with that LinkedIn button, for you to end up meeting lots of people who aren't actually looking for a job, and you could very easily interview 5, 6, 7 tire kickers, none of whom were serious about the market, or worse still, end up hiring somebody who originally was tire kicking, who gets to come and work for you, similarly with enormous expectations of what you're going to provide them as an employer, which are almost impossible to meet. One of the key things to remember as a hiring manager or as a client is the basics of modern salesmanship. No pain equals no change, and people without pain tend to move around the market very quickly. I made a note here, if I've got a stable track record, and let's say I've been in a job 5, 6, 7 years, but I've got no pain, you come along and offer me a load of money to leave the job I'm in, I've got massive leverage with which I can still then go and move very, very quickly. So the risks in the current market of not qualifying candidate pain sufficiently are particularly high right now. A high velocity market is exactly what it says on the tin. High velocity. So before you hit your LinkedIn button, be careful, do some thinking. And I'm going to leave you with a very simple question as we get towards the end of today's video blog, which is, would you rather be on 80k base and earn £160,000 a year for the next 5 years, year in, year out, in a job that you know you can nail, or would you rather get 100k base and not be sure whether you're going to earn 170 over the next 5 years? It's very tempting to hit the LinkedIn button, it's very tempting to hit the I'm available button, and before you know it, end up on 100k base in a job that fundamentally isn't very good. So in conclusion, just because it's a high velocity market doesn't mean you need to be part of it, part of the circle of people moving rapidly hoping to cash in on the basic salaries. Why not go somewhere where you can earn some commission, stay there and stick with it for as long as you can? You don't have to move. So that's me from the Wapentake, and I'll work out how to pronounce it on another day. This is really truly a lovely boozer just down Kergate near the market in Leeds. The whole thing is all set up to be all about Yorkshire and doing Yorkshire things, which I'm personally very proud of. Remember, if you've enjoyed the video, smash the like button, smash the share button, make sure you share it, distribute it, tell your friends, let everybody know about what we're doing here with the vlog, with book club and so on. Check us out for book club as well. We're doing some really interesting stuff. Next month we are doing The Effective Executive by Peter Drucker, which I figure should be a really, really good book for everybody concerned. Look us up on the podcast, that's absolutely excellent. So you can see the audio experience. Have a lovely week. Thank you. Goodbye.